Good evening, everyone. Our topic is about justice and fairness and mandated topic about taxation. First, I am going to discuss what is justice. Arguments about justice and fairness have a long tradition in Western civilization. In fact, no idea in Western civilization has been more consistently linked to ethics and morality than the idea of justice. From the Republic written by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato to a theory of justice written by the contemporary philosopher John Rawls, every major work on ethics has held that justice is part of the central core of morality. Justice means giving each person what he or she deserves. So justice means ito yung pagbibigay kung ano yung nararapat para sa isang tao. In a more traditional way, it is giving each person his or her due. So, kung ano yung dapat na ibibigay mo sa isang tao. When a person deserves respect, then you give them respect. When a person deserves love, you give them love because that is justice or yung just na dapat na ginagawa. Again, justice means giving each person what he or she deserves. So, justice and fairness are closely related terms that are often today used interchangeably. So napagbabaligtad natin yung paggamit natin sa justice and fairness. Pwede natin sabihin na justice is fairness and fairness is justice. There have also been more distinct understandings of the two terms. While justice usually has been used with reference to a standard of rightness, fairness often has been used with regard to an ability to judge without reference to one's feelings or interests. So, ito yung fairness is something to do in impartiality. Kung saan wala kang kinikilingan, wala kang pinoprotektahan, nasa gitna ka lamang. Neutral ka lamang. So that is a fairness. When you practice that kind of fairness or that kind of neutrality that is expected in you, then you are a just person who practices justice. Now, we have the principles of justice. The most fundamental principle of justice, one that has been widely accepted since it was first defined by Aristotle, the principle that equals should be treated equally and unequals unequally. Again, equals should be treated equally and unequals unequally. So it means na kapag equal tayong tao, then we should be treated the same. Ako, tao akong itatrato mo, at tao din kitang itatrato. So the other person should be treated us as co-equal being. So we should be treated equally. Pero hindi pwedeng itatrato for example na tao ay kaparehas sa isang unequal being natin. Halimbawa, ang aso o ang halaman. Alangan naman na mas pahahalagahan pa ng isang tao ang kanyang alagang aso o ang kanyang halaman kaysa sa kapwa niya tao. So that would be unfair. That would be unjust. Because equals should be treated equally and unequals should be treated unequally. In its contemporary form, this principle is sometimes expressed as follows. Individuals should be treated the same unless they differ in ways that are relevant to the situation in which they are involved. So, I have an example. If Juan and Pedro both do the same work as janitors in a company, and there are no relevant differences in the work they are doing. Ang winawalis ni Juan, ganon din naman ang winawalis ni Pedro. At ang winawalis ni Pedro, ganon din naman ang kay Juan. Ang trabaho nila parehas na parehas. Janitor sila parehas. Now, justice requires that they should be paid the same wages and receive the same benefits. Kung 5,000 ang nare-receive ni Juan, dapat 5,000 din ang nare-receive ni Pedro as basic wage. At kung 10,000 naman ang nare-receive na benefits ni Juan, ganun din naman ang nare-receive ni Pedro. So they are the same. Walang pagkakaiba. Why? Because they have the same work, so they have the same salary and the same benefits. Now, if Juan, for example, is paid and given benefits more than Pedro simply because he is a high school graduate while the Pedro is just an elementary graduate, then we have injustice, a form of discrimination, because educational qualifications are not relevant to Juan and Pedro's normal work situations. Not because high school graduate si Juan ay mas mataas na siya kaysa doon sa elementary graduate na si Pedro. And not just because they are differ when it comes to educational qualification means na dapat na mas itatrato mo na mataas ang isa kaysa doon sa isa. So that would be unfair. That would be unjust. So the principles of justice will not be observed in this situation. So dapat pantay-pantay lang. Kung ano ang nare-receive ni Juan, ganun din dapat ang nare-receive ni Pedro. Because they have the same kind of work and they are both janitors.
Discuss to you the different kinds of justice and its examples. First, distributive justice refers to the extent to which society institutions ensure that benefits and burdens are distributed among society's members in ways that are fair and just. When the institution of a society distribute benefits or burden in unjust ways, there is a strong presumption that those institutions should be changed. For example, the American institutions of slavery in the Free Civil War. South was condemned as unjust because it was a glaring case of treating differently on the basis of race. Example of distributive justice is achieved when equal receive the same allocation of benefits. Public program that provides social security or medical care to all elderly and retired persons are distributive justice in constitutional democracy. Next is retributive justice. Retributive justice refers to the extent to which punishments are fair and just. In general, punishments are held to be just to the extent that they take into account relevant criteria such as the seriousness of the crime and the intent of criminals, and discount irrelevant such as race. It would be barbarously and unjust, for example, to chop off a person's hand for stealing money, or to impose the death penalty on a person who by accident and without negligence injured another person. Examples is the death penalty. Death penalty practice in 31 of our states and the federal government such as retributive justice. In this case, the death penalty or capital punishment is used to punish murderers. In other words, a life for a life. Next is compensatory justice. Compensatory justice refers to the extent. Compensatory justice refers to the extent to which people are fairly compensated for their injuries by those who have injured them. Just compensation is proportional to the loss inflicted on a person. In the Philippine legal system, they are called damages. Damages are categorized as a moral exemplary or corrective, nominal, temperate, or moderate, actual, or compensatory, liquidated. Compensatory example refers to the extent to which people are fairly compensated for their injuries by those who have injured them. Compensation is proportional to the inflicted person. Precisely the kind of justice that is stake in debates over damage to workers, health, and coal mines. Next is the examples of justice. First is values. Values means are foundational beliefs held by individual, group, or society. Next is ethics and moral. Both morality and ethics closely have to do with distinguishing the difference between good and bad or right or wrong. Next is bias. Bias and an inclination of temperament or outlook, especially a personal and sometimes unreasoned judgment or an instant of such prejudice, bent, or tendency. Next is natural law. Natural law is a theory in ethics and philosophy that says that human beings possess intrinsic values that govern their reasoning and behavior. Natural law maintains these rules of right and wrong are inherent in people and not created by the society or court judge. Next is relativism. Relativism is the belief that there's no absolute truth, only the truths that are particular individuals or culture. Next is moral panic. Moral panic means a public mass movement based on false exaggerated perceptions or information that exceeds the actual threat society is facing. Moral panic is a widespread fear and often irrational threat to the society's values, interests, and safety. Next is virtue signaling. Virtue signaling, it is an attempt to show other people that you are a good person. For example, by expressing opinions that will be acceptable to them, especially on social media. And that's all. Thank you.
Fairness has been used to refer to the ability to make judgments that are not overly general but that are concrete and specific to a particular case. In any case, a notion of being treated everyone deserves, and it is crucial, both justice and fairness. Individuals should be treated the same unless they differ in ways that are relevant to the situation in which they are involved. For example, we work at the company and the company give the salary that we are deserved at sapat doon sa ating pinagtrabahuhan. At meron tayong tinatawag na rules and regulation kung saan lahat tayo ay pantay at kung saan at kung paano at magkano ang sweldong matatanggap ng isang empleyado na kung saan hindi siya makakalamang sa isang kumpanya at ganon din ang kumpanya sa mga empleyado. Kung saan ay magiging patas ito kaya't para maibigay ang karapat-dapat sa ating mamamayan ay kailangan nating sundin ang mga batas para maging equal ang lahat. Nevertheless, justice is the expression of our mutual recognition of each other, basic dignity, and acknowledgement that is, we are live together in an interdependent community. We must treat each other as equals. Kailangan natin na maging aware sa ating mga ginagawang pagkilos o hakbang. Dahil meron itong kahihinatnan, either mali or tama. Kaya't kailangan nating maging mapagmatsyag sapagkat magiging epekto ito sa ating pagiging fair. Dapat palagi tayong gagawa ng tama para magiging equal ang lahat at wala tayong nilalabag na mga consequence or any rules na makaka-apekto sa
Now I'm going to discuss the difference between justice and fairness. Fairness is the quality of making judgments that are free from discrimination. Justice is an action that is morally right and fair. I think the difference is that fairness is about having proper perspective and justice is about having the right done.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, classmate. My topic is about taxation. Taxation is the process or means by which the sovereign independent state, through its law-making body, the legislative imposes burdens upon subject and object within its jurisdiction for the purpose of raising revenues to carry out the legitimate objects of government. Tax is an amount of money that the government requires people to pay according to their income, the value of their property, etc., and that is used to pay for the things done by the government. Taxation not only pays for public goods and services, it is also a key ingredient in the social contract between citizens and the economy. Holding governments accountable encourages the effective administration for the tax revenues and widely good public financial management. The Philippine government relies heavily on the tax revenue to fund its operations and finance its development projects. So, taxation is a critical part of the country's economic and fiscal policy. Taxes imposed at the national level are collected by the Bureau of Internal Revenue (BIR), while those imposed at the local level, provincial, city, municipal, and barangay, are collected by a local treasurer's office. The primary purpose of taxation on the part of the government is to provide funds of property with which to promote the general welfare and the protection of its citizens and to enable it to finance the multifarious activities. Taxation is often employed as a device for regulation or control by means of which certain effects on condition invention by the government. Dapat tayo mga mamamayan ay dapat nating bayaran ang ating mga buwis ayon sa nararapat upang ang pundong ito ay makakatulong upang ang ating gobyerno ay makapagpatayo ng kahit anumang proyekto lalo na sa ating community at para din mapaayos ng gobyerno ang mga daan upang hindi tayo nahihirapan.
Who collecting the tax? Taxes collected from both direct tax and indirect tax are the government's tax revenue. It includes collection from income tax, corporation tax, custom wealth tax, tax on land revenue, and etc. Direct tax is the tax that is paid directly to the government by the person or company on whom it is levied. Indirect tax is a tax that is imposed on a transaction, which is a tax imposed directly on a property, an entity, or a person. Indirect taxes are typically added to the prices of goods or services. Example of direct tax: income tax, corporation tax, property tax, inheritance tax, and gift tax. Income tax is a major source of revenue for the government. Is used to fund public service, pay government obligation, and provide goods for the citizen. Example is yung nagtatrabaho, parehas same sa aking asawa. Nagtatrabaho siya sa government. Kinukuhanan sila doon ng taxes para gawing pundo ng gobyerno. At Ang example naman sa indirect tax ay valued added tax or VAT. Madalas makikita natin ito sa resibo ng ating mga pinamili na naka-indirect siya sa good and services.
Good evening, everyone. My topic for this evening is all about the Bureau of Internal Revenue. It is in the Bureau of Internal Revenue where we can get some documents, forms, and others like account information, application forms, certificates, documentary, excise tax return, legal forms, other forms, payment or remittance forms, transfer tax return, value-added tax or percentage tax returns. Every person liable to pay taxes shall file a monthly and quarterly returns. For starters, not paying taxes is against the law, whether you're working for a company or your own business. Failure to do so will have some serious consequences. The basic source of Philippine tax law is the National Internal Revenue Law, which codifies all tax provisions. The latest of which is embodied in Republic Act Number 8424 or the Tax Reform Act of 1997. It amended previous national internal revenue codes, which was approved on December 11, 1997. We need to pay taxes for our country's own good because we, the citizen, will benefit our paid taxes in the future. Kahit may maliit na negosyo, kailangan pa rin nating magbayad ng ating mga tax, kumuha ng ating mga business clearance, business permits. Kasi sa huli tayo rin ang makakabenepisyo ng mga binabayad nating mga buwis.
Good evening, ma'am. For the conclusion of this topic, as a citizen, we belong in our society. We have a role and responsibilities to do so and contribute our service for our economic development. We need to pay our taxes. That is mandated, and failure to do it have some serious consequences, and it is important in our society to have an individual who are treated unequally on the basis of characteristics that are irrelevant. Their fundamental human dignity is violated. That's why justice is a central part of ethics that should be given due to consideration in our moral lives. Thank you, ma'am.